Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the Treasury tax measures for COVID-19, essentially talking about ETI and other things. I hope you're finding these webinars useful. This is the fourth one we've run since Friday. And I hope you're also finding our postings and coverage of the legislative framework as it's rapidly evolving, or maybe not so rapidly evolving as some people in some industries might have said. Please let me just hear from you as to whether or not you can hear me properly.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I'm going to mute everybody's microphone. I'm sure we're all sitting here in our pajamas, all nice and woolly, unshaven, and absolutely molding in our chairs. Certainly I am. I've been stuck to my chair since Thursday. Nevertheless, let us begin. So we are talking about the Treasury tax measures, which were they were sent out in draft form yesterday. They haven't yet been gazetted by the Treasury Department, but they're effective from the 1st of April, whichever way you look at it. On first reading of these measures, you could, if you're a seasoned ETI user, employment tax incentive user, you might very well ask, well, what's the big chap? We are using ETI to the max, but let's go through it and let's see how far we can actually get in engaging. Please remember, I'm muting your microphone, but if at any stage you want to ask a question or make a statement, you just need to unmute your microphone and it will work miraculously for you. So the new measures, which generally have been now sent out for public comment, and I do need to say for public comment, although I'd imagine the gazetting would take place pretty shortly, are the following. Number one, a tax subsidy to employers of up to 500 Rand per month for the next 4 months for private sector employees earning under 6,500 Rand in terms of the tax employment incentive. Now, that's the issue. The 6,500 Rand is an issue, and you will see in a little while why it's an important issue. The big change here is that 500 Rand is available for employees between the ages of 30 and 65 who to date have not been on your employment tax incentive in your business. A large proportion of what we're going to be discussing today really has to do with those companies that have not yet been exploring ETI rather than necessarily those companies that have been exploring ETI. Although if you have not been exploring it to its full potential, then there certainly is benefit. But that 6,500 Rand figure is a very important figure because it indicates a figure that relates to everybody and not just your current employees on your employment tax incentive. The South African Revenue Service is going to accelerate the payment of employment tax rebates from twice a year. Now, at this moment in time, you're entitled to apply to SARS twice a year, essentially split throughout the year, twice a year, where you might have implemented ETI, you might have on a monthly basis been deducting employment tax incentive funding out of your PAYE and into your payroll. But there are some months where your ETI figure will have been significantly higher. For example, bonus months or commission months or seasonality, just because of seasonality. And so ordinarily you might not have been deducting those threshold amounts, the total amounts you could be claiming in those good months, and therefore you're entitled twice a year to be asking for a rebate or a reimbursement from SARS to get into the hands of cash, to get cash into the hands of compliant employers as soon as possible. That's what SARS are saying are their objective. And then thirdly, tax compliant businesses with a turnover of 15 million Rand or less will be allowed to delay 20% of their employees' tax liabilities over the next 4 months and a portion of their provisional corporate income tax payments without penalty or interest over the next 6 months. This intervention expected to assist 75,000 small and medium. So in that paragraph, there are actually two benefits you need to take note of. The first is that if you're not currently using ETI, then you can defer 20% of your PAYE payments over the next 4 months. That's very important, 20% of your PAYE payment over the next 4 months. So you can save in not paying that over to SARS so that you can utilize it elsewhere, and a portion, and this is additional, and a portion of your provisional corporate income tax, which can be deferred without penalties or interest over the next 6 months. So the 20% of PAYE relates to your 4-month period, whereas the deferment of income tax payments relates to a 6-month period. So you've got a longer period to defer your income tax payments. Now, together with the Commission of SARS, National Treasury says they're going to be considering other additional exceptional adjustments to assist with the current COVID-19 problem we've got. And then where they've created newly formed funds, how those newly formed funds are going to be treated from a tax perspective. So a lot of these things have been announced prematurely without Treasury actually having any kind of opportunity to consider what the regulations should be around them. So watch this space, and we will certainly keep you informed. Just so that you keep yourself apprised, these are the two sites you need to regularly be referring to. That's treasury.gov.za, and the other one is sars.gov.za. Please always remember, these are different institutions. The one is a government department, and the other one is SARS. And therefore, they have their own systems, they have their own websites, they have their own information and communication mechanisms. So it's always very good for your chief financial officer, your accountants, your bookkeepers to keep in touch with both of these sites. And very often you'll find different information on each of these sites that you need to be aware of. Right, so moving on. We're now going to look at the various measures in detail, or in some kind of detail, in as much detail as is incorporated in the draft document which was published yesterday. So the first is to supplement existing employment tax incentive, ETI dispensation. So the employment tax incentive, what is it? It's a 24-month benefit which a company is able to claim for employees who are under the age of 29 and prior to enacting an ETI claim, they were employed in your business. And essentially that incentive says 1,000 Rand a month for months 1 to 12 and 500 Rand a month for months 13 to 24 per individual under the age of 29 is what in terms of ETI you can ordinarily be claiming. The employment tax incentive was first introduced in 2014, and in 2018 it was announced that it would be extended for another 10 years. So it was first introduced for a 5-year period. In 2018, it was announced that it would be extended for another 10 years. So that's very, very important. This is government saying that it has faith that ETI is working and that it wants to see it continuing because it's creating job opportunities for young people and previously unemployed individuals. And those are, in fact, the objectives: to promote employment, particularly of young workers, to reduce the cost of hiring young people between the ages of 18 and 29. We refer to them as qualifying employees. An ETI the employment tax incentive is a cost-sharing mechanism with government by allowing the employer to reduce the amount of employee tax, PAYE, which they pay to SARS, while leaving the wage received by the qualifying employee unaffected. Basically, you're using SARS's money, PAYE, to supplement your payroll. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what this is, what ETI has been since January 2014. If you've not been using ETI, in other words, if you've been paying your PAYE since January 2014 over to SARS, it means that you have a bookkeeper or an accountant who has literally just ignored the opportunity to supplement your payroll by the total amount of PAYE on a monthly basis, which you've been paying over to SARS, insofar as that payroll relates to people under the age of 29. If you've not introduced, if you've not amended, for example, your policies, your employment policies, your recruitment policies in your business, to indicate that at least the majority of people employed henceforth should be under the age of 26, because you're able to supplement your payroll in this way by using ETI, then you really are ill-advised by your bookkeepers, you're ill-advised by your accountants, and quite frankly, you've got a human resource department that's not doing its job. And I'm sorry to sound so blasé, but this thing has been going since 2014, which means for at least the last 5 years and for the next 10 years, you have this opportunity. Um, so this is critically important. And please feel free to make comments on the chat line, or feel free to ask any questions you want to, ladies and gentlemen. This is discussion. It's not, I don't want it just to be a presentation. Now, these are critically important because ordinarily, without these changes, the ETI program made or continues to make provision for the employer to claim employment tax incentive in respect of qualifying employees. Who are qualifying employees? There are people between the ages of 18 and 29, and there are people to whom you are paying less than 6,500 Rand a month. 6,500 Rand a month. It used to be 3,500 Rand a month. So that minimum amount has in fact increased since the announcement of the 10-year extension. But basically, anyone you're employing who you're paying 6,500 Rand a month to and who is under the age of 29, you can deduct your employment tax incentives of 1,000 Rand a month for the months 1 to 12, and then from months 13 to 24, as long as they're still under the age of 29, another 500 Rand a month for those people. But now that has changed, and we're going to see some dramatic changes now in terms of this regulation. Remembering, please, and I was asked this question this morning during a telephone conference, these changes apply to the next 4 months from the 1st of April, May, June, July. So they apply for the period of April, May, June, and July. At this stage, they do not apply from the 1st of August onwards. So it's critically important you understand that these are temporary changes, temporary relaxations. Now, why? Why is government doing this? Well, government proposes expanding the current ETI to assist employers to retain employees during this critical period where we need social distancing, where we need lockdown, and thus reducing the risk of low-income earners losing their employment as a result of the outbreak. Now, let's be honest. If you wanted to, ladies and gentlemen, you could implement a Section 189 process, and that Section 189 process could allow you to retrench. It's not nice. It's not something the Department of Labor wants you to do. The Department of Labor has sent out a number of comments which in fact indicate that it's illegal. It's not illegal, but it's certainly not morally defendable that you would want to retrench. But if you did want to retrench, if you had to retrench, if you initiated retrenchment processes before this COVID thing started, you're entitled to carry on with them. And really, applying last in, first out, there's no question about the fact that it would be the majority of your ETI employees that you'd want to get rid of first, want to retrench first. And so what government is saying is we're going to give you extra 500 Rand a month for each of those individuals to try and retain those people. Now, what's interesting is I was speaking to one of my clients this morning who told me that they're having problems because their clients are starting to pay people, let's call it danger pay, in essential services. They're starting to pay people additional, sometimes double their salary just to come to work. And it's affecting my clients who supply services to those companies where their employees are seeing on the notice board all of these additional incentives, and therefore they want those additional incentives as well. What ETI does is it says for those people under the age of 29, well, in fact, not any longer, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But what it says is you can deduct an extra 500 Rand per person per month to basically cover the costs, I suppose, of transport, to cover the costs of trying to entice people who ordinarily might not want to come to work to come to work. So this is an important consideration. I want to say at this stage, right at the very beginning, this provision applies to those companies who are not maxed out on ETI under normal circumstances. So if you are using ETI to its full and logical conclusion, then you're not going to have the space to find that extra 500 Rand per person per month. However, what it does for you is it allows you to build up if you want, a loan account against ETI for those months where you are going to exceed the average amount of PAYE you pay because of either bonuses, because of commissions or increases or whatever it is. So the reality is, to a very limited extent, you're building up a loan account against the ETI that you can then cash in. And remember now that the third change is a change that says SARS will pay on a monthly basis and not only twice a year for the period of COVID, at least, if not in perpetuity. But the reality is you have to have, within the course of a year at least, you have to have banked the additional amount you'd want to be claiming for a rebate. So please, you need to understand that and understand it properly. Before I carry on, let me just go back to that screen. Before I carry on, Neil Duncan has asked a question. Either does the ETI incentive only apply to people you employ who qualify, or for all existing employees on your payroll that qualify? Does the ETI incentive only apply to people you employ who qualify, in other words, under the age of 29 and earning less than 6,500 Rand a month, or for all existing employees on your payroll that qualify? Well, all existing employees on your payroll qualify if they're under the age of 29 and, in fact, earning less than 6,500 Rand a month ordinarily, which means you're not employing new people for ETI purposes. You're looking at your existing workforce, Neil, and you're segmenting your existing workforce sufficiently so that you know who's under the age of, not 29, by the way, 27, I would say. And so you're saying those are the guys now on whose behalf we will claim on a monthly basis an extra 1,000 Rand a month diverted from PAYE. Let me restate that. Those are the guys, that's a part of my workforce on whose behalf I will claim an extra 1,000 Rand a month, or rather 1,000 Rand a month, to be diverted from PAYE, pay as you earn, into my payroll account in my business. It's an automatic claim. I'm claiming it every month that I'm submitting my monthly EMPs. In fact, if you're doing it electronically, it'll say, how much ETI do you qualify for this month and how much do you want to claim? Neil, I'm saying again, this has been going on since 2015, or 2014, which means if you're not using ETI, it means you've got a bookkeeper or an accountant who was ill-advised, who was ignorant, or quite frankly, who was just lazy and didn't want to do the job for you. And an HR department who should have known better, who really didn't utilize the opportunity. So the answer is you're not employing new people to classify them as qualifying employees. And more importantly, it applies to your entire workforce. And I'm going to show you in a little while how even more so it now applies to your entire workforce for the next 4 months. I hope I answered your question, Neil. All right. So what is it? Government is proposing expanding the ETI program for a limited period of 4 months, beginning 1st of April, ending 30th of July. So this expansion of ETI has a life. Its life is from the 1st of April until the 31st of July and not beyond at this moment in time. What you can be certain of is if the lockdown is extended, then very certainly this program will be extended beyond the 31st of July. Now, how? Number one, there is an increase in the maximum amount of the ETI claimable during the 4-month period for eligible employees. Now, at the moment, you're claiming 1,000 Rand a month for each employee, and you're doing the claiming, by the way. In answer to your question, Neil, the individual employee doesn't claim that amount. It's your payroll department in your company that simply sets that off against your PAYE. And you can go up, by the way, to 100% of PAYE for qualifying employees. There's no restriction on how much PAYE you can be diverting. So ordinarily, you would claim 1,000 Rand per month within the limit of PAYE that you've been paying against eligible employees for month 1 to 12. And then from month 13 to 24, 500 Rand a month for those individuals. So that's quite important. From month 13 to 24, it goes down from 1,000 Rand a month to 500 Rand a month. Now, what's great about this change is this change has extended it beyond that. But we'll get to beyond that 24-month period, but we'll get to that in a moment. Number two of the how. allowing a monthly ETI claim in the amount of 500 Rand during this 4-month period for employees from the ages of 18 to 29 who are no longer eligible for ETI because they've gone past the 24-month mark. Now, that's beautiful, I think, because what it means is if you have been doing ETI for the last 5 years, then certainly you will have found that employees have gone beyond the 24-month mark. And therefore, but for this particular category, 2A, but are still under the age of 29, and those employees, you would be able to continue to claim your 500 Rand a month for, in addition to the guys you currently do have on ETI. And 2B, which says for all of those people within your company earning under the age of 6,500 Rand a month, from the ages of 30 up until the ages of 65, you would also equally be able to claim 500 Rand a month if there was enough payroll, which was available to you, PAYE, which was available to you. So if you haven't been using it, then you can make PAYE apply to all of your employees by claiming an ETI incentive of that extra 500 Rand a month. So let's assume you've got a payroll, for argument's sake, of R1 million a month. We should only be so lucky. Let's assume you've got a payroll of R1 million a month. And let's assume you're using ETI for 500,000 Rand at this moment in time because you've only got that number of employees under the age of 29. So you're not using 500,000 Rand of that R1 million of PAYE. However, what you're now able to do for the next 4 months is for your employees who are earning 6,500 Rand or less a month, between the ages of 30 to 65, you're able to dip into that extra 500,000 Rand a month at 500 Rand per person per month, or in total 2,000 Rand in total for the full 4 months per employee to actually supplement your payroll. So I think that that's absolutely critically important, ladies and gentlemen, that you do understand that. I'm going to do something now. I'm going to unmute your microphones in case there are any questions anybody wants to ask in this regard before we go any further. No questions. All right. Well, that's excellent, because that indicates that everybody understands so far. And certainly I think it indicates that everyone's actually read the draft regulation, which is fantastic. So moving to point number 3 of the how. Accelerating the payment of employment tax incentive reimbursements, as I said a little earlier, from twice a year to monthly as a means of getting cash into the hands of tax compliant employers as soon as possible. So that's the how. So that's ETI. Now, moving on, we are now going to talk about the second measure in this draft regulation, and that is about deferring the transfer of payroll taxes to SARS, the tax authority. Now, this is a deferment, all right? Now, what this means is that if you haven't exhausted your use of PAYE or your transfer of PAYE over to payroll, and there is money left in there, then in fact you're entitled for qualifying businesses, and that means tax compliant small to medium sized businesses for that 4-month period, you're able to defer payment of 20% of your PAYE liability without penalties and interest for the late payment thereof, and you will be able to defer that payment for 4 months. So from the 1st of August, you'll have to start paying those amounts back, and there won't be penalties and interest charged, and you can only defer a maximum of 20% of your PAYE if you're not exhausting it with the ETI mechanism. The deferred PAYE liability has to be paid to SARS in equal installments over the 6-month period starting 1st of August. So you can defer 4 months worth of PAYE, and from the 1st of August, you can take 6 months to pay that amount plus the amount you owe in that particular month back to SARS. First payment needing to be made on the 7th of September 2020. When we talk about small or medium, because remember, this is only eligible or rather this is only applicable to companies which are eligible, which are small and medium-sized businesses. And essentially that means with a turnover, an annual turnover not exceeding 50 million rand. An annual turnover not exceeding 50 million rand. So Neil, those guys who are in the billion rand a month turnover category, this wouldn't apply to you guys. Right. Our third measure, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the deferral of the payment of provisional tax. And here you are entitled to defer your payment of provisional tax for that same 4-month period. The fourth schedule of the Act says you've got to pay provisional tax, 50% of the total estimated liability within 6 months after the commencement of your financial year. And the second amount must be made by no later than the last day of that financial year. So ordinarily, you have to make 2 payments a year of provisional tax. The first 50% of that total within 6 months, and the second by the end of that financial year. So that's ordinarily what you have to do. So this third measure will say that SARS allows you to defer a portion of the payment of the first and your second provisional tax liability to SARS without penalties and interest for the late payment. First provisional tax payment due from the 1st of April to the 30th of September based on 15% of your estimated total tax liability, while the second based on 65%. Provisional taxpayers with deferred payments will be required to pay the full tax liability when making your third provisional tax payment, which will essentially be the first of the following tax year, in order to avoid interest penalties. So the proposed amendments are deemed to have come into operation on the 1st of April and apply for the first provisional tax period ending 1st of April 2020, but before 1st of October 2020, and the second provisional tax period after the 1st of April, but before the 1st of April 2021. So your accountants, your bookkeepers will understand that completely. Kate has asked a question. Kate, your question is, will the deferred PAY liability relate to accumulation of liabilities from the 1st of April or the 1st of March? It will be from the 1st of April. The 4 months begins from the 1st of April, Kate. So it will be April, May, June, July for that period. It won't include from the 1st of March. Unless when they publish a schedule which clarifies that it will. So let me just keep it at that. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the discussion that we're having today. I did say it would be short and sharp, but let me now throw it out to you for questions, because normally the rub will come out in the questioning. So I'm going to unmute you. Can I get an indication? Well, not an indication. There's no way I can ask for an indication. But if there is anybody who to date has not engaged in deducting ETI, or doing the ETI thing, then please just indicate yourself and we can use you as an example if you want to. I am unmuting you as we speak. Anybody want to go forward? Okay, so everybody on the line at the moment is actually utilizing. Sorry, who is that?
Hi,
Hello, who is that?
it's Jamie. I just have a quick question with the ETI. Let's say lockdown doesn't continue, so 30th of April we're all at work and we hire new hires. Would the additional 500 Rand also apply to them as they were hired in that 4-month period?
So in other words, you're an essential service.
Yeah, so if we do have to bring on more staff in April or May, can we claim the additional 500 for them, even though they're brand new in that 4 months?
And in fact, Jamie, that's exactly the same question that Vineet Grover has just asked. How about ETI claims on new hires in April 2020? Absolutely. So you're entitled to add employees onto your ETI list, either new hires or existing employees. So you can go onto ETI straight away, even though you haven't gone onto ETI. And if you send me a WhatsApp about that on 0828805316, I can show you how to do it. But you're entitled to go onto ETI, anytime. And when you do, you're entitled to utilize this provision as well. So the answer is absolutely. You can add new employees and you can engage in this exercise all the way through to the end of July. I hope that does answer your question. Dominique asked, can this presentation be sent? Absolutely, Dominique. It will be sent out to everybody who's been on this list. Erin says, for the PAYE deferral, do you submit your return showing the total PAYE and only pay 80% to SARS? For the PAYE deferral, do you submit your return showing the total PAYE and only pay 80% to SARS? Yes, that's exactly what you would do. It might very well be that your system will reject that, in which case you would need to reduce your total PAYE amount. And when SARS asks a question, if they ask a question, it would, I suppose at this stage, it would be done on the honor basis, but I can't see SARS doing that, which means that there will be additional regulations which come along in the next week or so, Erin, which will explain how that happens. It might be a very good question for you to ask your payroll company, whether it's Sage or whatever it is, but to ask your payroll company how they, in fact, are going to manage that 20% deduction or reduction. If you said to me, and I want to make this point, if you said to me, what is preferential? If we don't do ETI, is it preferential to do the 20% deduction or deferral, or is it preferential to do ETI? I would say to you, I'm not going to use what I wanted to say. I would say to you that you're being foolhardy in not utilizing ETI. Let me just leave it at that. Because if you're deferring your PAYE payment, it means you're going to have to pay it over at some stage. In other words, from month 5 onwards. Whereas if you're using ETI, it means that's the end of the obligation to SARS. You have taken the PAYE money and you've utilized it to subsidize your payroll. So why you would want to defer, as the only case that would be absolutely applicable is if you don't have employees under the age of 29, except remember that the third provision allows you to apply to any employees between 30 and 65 who are earning below the wage of 6,500 Rand. So, Erin, in one way or another, the answer is yes. I suppose you'd need to make your reduction up front unless your payroll company has sent through a patch which allows you to do it differently. But why would you want to do it if you can do ETI? It doesn't make logical sense to me. Please feel free to send me a private WhatsApp, and I'm happy to chat to you further in that regard. All right. Any other questions?
Ivor, it's Neil Duncan. Just to confirm.
Hello, Neil. I'm sorry I made fun of you, Neil. I know you're not making R1 billion
not a problem.
We all wish you were.
Yeah, I wish we could wish. Ivor, the 500 Rand is applicable to any sized organization. It's not limited to the 50 million.
No, there's no issue there with regard to that.
So the other incentives are limited to
Absolutely.
Businesses with less than 50.
Absolutely.
But that 500 Rand is total.
Absolutely.
We've always claimed ETI, but we've applied it to, well, since it came in, to young people that we've employed fresh and new to the business,
okay,
who've met the criteria. We didn't go back and put it through to people we currently employed that might have been with the company for quite some time, who may be qualified. So I will revisit that, but I don't think there's many people in that category.
All right, good. Thanks for that. There is a question by Rene. If you haven't applied for ETI, can you do so now? Absolutely. So Rene, let me explain the process to you. You're not ever applying for ETI. Every single month you do an EMP return. When you do your EMP return, it actually says to you, your total PAYE is 100,000 Rand. The number of employees you're entitled to ETI deductions for will be 30. That means, in other words, under the age of 29, and that means ordinarily that you will then be in a position to deduct 30,000 Rand of that 100,000 Rand a month, which then means that the other 70,000 Rand a month, you could defer 20% of the 100,000 Rand or 20,000 Rand from that remaining 70,000 Rand a month. But you'll have to pay that eventually, except now you can bump up from 30,000 Rand to 30,000 or 30 times 1,500 Rand. So that's 45,000 Rand. So you move up from 30,000 Rand deduction to 45,000 Rand deduction. Obviously, I'm discounting your second years or your month 13s to 24s there. But generally, you can do it at any stage. It's not difficult to do, and I'm only too happy to show you how to do it, Rene. Just privately WhatsApp me. But please stop sending me all those dirty pictures. Right, moving on. Any other questions? That was a joke, Rene. I hope you don't take offense. Any other questions? Please feel free, ladies and gentlemen. This is quite critical that you end this meeting today. Experts in ETI and deferment of PAYE and also tax. So please feel free to ask those questions. I am, by the way, going to be interviewing a number of tax experts and a tax lawyer as well. And so I will post those interviews as well to you on the WhatsApp group or in this group of the individuals who might not be on the WhatsApp group. So please feel free to keep asking for those interviews as we post them. I'm just quickly going here to one of the questions which has just been asked. Okay, so that was for your boss. Okay, fine. All right, so anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Anyone want to ask any further questions before I end off today's hopefully very short webinar? And yes, we have kept to under 45 minutes. So I'm quite proud of that. No further questions. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege chatting to you. And we will run many of these webinars as and when regulations come out and we are trying to clarify things. So please feel free to indicate as and when you want to that you want to participate in these webinars. And I will send out the link to this recording as soon as we've processed today's recording of this webinar. But again, thank you very much for participating and attending.